Hey church, it's great to be here with you, and thank you so much for joining us for our new series, Fireside Chats, hearing from the heart of our pastors here at Christ Wesleyan Church. I hope you were able to learn a lot from the sermon this past Sunday, but today I want to take you a little bit deeper. Now, this past Sunday, I got to share my testimony of what God has done in the midst of my life, and many of you also have testimonies of how is God working? How has He brought you to the point where you're at right now? And let me tell you, your testimony is one of the most important and impactful evangelistic tools that you have available to you. Your story matters, whether it's to others or if it's to God in your own journey. That's something that's so important to be able to practice and really hone here as Christians. We see in Philippians chapter 1, verses 27, that it says, "Whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then whether I come and see you or only hear about you in my absence, I will know that you stand firm in one spirit, striving together as for the faith of the gospel, without being frightened in any way by those who oppose you. This is a sign to them that they will be destroyed, but that you will be saved, and that by God. For it has been granted to you on behalf of Christ not only to believe in Him, but also to suffer for Him. Since you are going through the same struggle you saw I had, and now hear that I still have. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united in Christ, if any comfort from His love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness or compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather in humility value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others." We can see in the beginning part of this passage, Paul says to conduct ourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel. And this is something that your testimony is not just spoken about, but it's also lived out in the way that you're living your life in your workplace, in your communities. It's something that's so important. When you are experiencing hardships in your life, such as some of them that I mentioned in my sermon, people are watching not just what you say, but what you do, what your actions are portraying. And oftentimes it's in the midst of those hardships that they will be most open to what God has to do in their lives because of what's going on in yours. So that's something that's incredibly interesting and also really important in the midst of your testimony. Another part of Philippians shortly thereafter, when Paul is writing here, he says, "Therefore, my dear friends, of you is always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill His good purpose. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine like stars in the sky as you hold firmly to the word of life." Once again, he shows that in the midst of what's going on in your life, you have the ability to shine in the midst of our dark world, in the midst of the trials and tribulations and hardships where people ask so many questions. How you act and how you testify to God's goodness during that time can have such an incredible impact on how people view God and maybe them making a decision for Him in the future. So even in the midst of what you're going through, how do you give your testimony? What is that next step that you can do in order to testify that goodness that God has done in your life? Well, one of the things that makes it easy is to write it down. Actually put it on paper, or once you have it on paper, practice it in person, out loud. You can practice it like a camera, like I'm doing right now. You can practice it to a mirror. There's so many different ways that you can actually testify and give your testimony without the pressure of doing it right then in the midst of a situation. For some of us, we may need a little bit more help with promptings as well. We go over this in our baptism class here at Christ Wesleyan, where there are 3 movements that I seek to have when I'm testifying to somebody. Number 1, what was your life like before a significant moment in your spiritual walk? So for me, when I was talking about how I gave my life to Christ, my life before I gave my life to Christ was really two-faced. I was wearing a mask. I wasn't acting as the same person at school as I was in church. So that brought me to the next thing, the second thing, which is a turning point. What was that moment in which you actually submitted to God and said, I really need to change this. I need to really accept Christ and move in the direction of Him. And third, what is He doing in your life right now after you made that decision? Those are the clear points in which you can clearly identify where was God before you made that decision, how did you meet together, and what is God doing in your life right now. As you go through your leader guides or as you are continuing to learn more about your relationship with Jesus, I highly encourage you, work through this testimony, not just in your words, also in your actions, but live a life fully surrendered to Christ in these moments. I hope you have a blessed week, and may God continue to make His presence known in your life.